Hi, I'm Justin Barrett, president of Blueprint 1543. I'm a former university professor and psychological scientist. And today, in this episode, I'd like to talk about how groupish we are as a species. And is that always bad? Or is it always good? Not clear. What do I mean by groupish? It's a term that many scientists who study humans, social psychologists, anthropologists, and others are starting to use. Jonathan Haidt has popularized use of the term. But what it's trying to get at the idea that humans are immensely social animals. Of course, we're not the only social animals. There are all kinds of herd animals, antelopes, cattle, water buffaloes, birds, fish, lots of different animals live in groups because there are lots of benefits to group living. Maybe you've seen those, viral videos of the herd of water buffalo saving the baby water buffalo from the lion. It's a great example of the benefits of group living. If you are in a group, the group can rally against faster, stronger, more dangerous predators that are out there and save the young from the attack. Or if you are a human group, we can coordinate activities. So we can do group hunts or group building activities or group farming, or there are all kinds of division of labor benefits that we get from living in groups, as well as protection from enemies and other kinds of environmental hazards. We can look out for each other. We can care for our young. It takes a village and all of that other stuff. So it's really great to live in a group. In humans, in contrast to most other animals, we also use our group living to pass on knowledge, to pass on information to the next generation, sometimes called cultural transmission. And to do that, you got to be around other people. But these uses of group living raise some interesting challenges too. How do you hold groups together to make them tight, cohesive, unified, not likely to fragment? How do you keep people from defecting and sort of cheating the group, getting some of the benefits but not contributing? And when it comes to passing on relevant cultural information, who do I imitate? Who do I learn from? Who's my group for that kind of learning and passing on of the wisdom of my people? Well, for all of those reasons, we seem to have psychological mechanisms that are active very early in life to help kids try to figure out who is my group. Who's the group that I need to pay attention to as I'm learning in this world? Who are the ones with the right information? Who can I trust? And so there are fun little findings like little children, infants, prefer the speech patterns of the language of their mother over other languages. So they selectively attend to mom's language. They're attracted to people who talk in mom's language or with mom's inflections and intonations. Right? This is from very early on when they're just coming out. They're fresh from the womb, piping hot. They're already attracted to certain kinds of speech patterns. There are other kinds of markers of group membership that children are very sensitive to, and we can see these worked out on playgrounds and schoolyards all the time. Who's got the cooties and who don't helps divide up who's in my in group and who's in the out group. And what seems to be really strange and worrisome is it's very easy to, at least temporarily, form lots of groups. It's been experimentally done many times now in lots of different ways, variations of the following. We take a bunch of kids, or adults if you like, and we put some in red shirts and some in blue shirts, randomly assigning them. Okay, you red, you blue, blue, red, 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 blue, 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 red. They have two different sets of clothes now and have them stand over in two different corners of the room. Suddenly, groupishness kicks in, and we think our group is smarter than that other group. We are more talented, more attractive, morally more upstanding. That other group is also more uniform. They're easier to stereotype. They're all more alike. We have rich diversity in our amazingness, and they're all the same in their loserness. Kids generate those intuitions with very little impetus. All it takes is that shirt and sort of putting them in two little groups, and not just kids. Sadly, we see this in adults too. And if you doubt that, all you have to do is go to a sporting event where people who did not care at all about this sporting event or their group membership suddenly are divided by who's their team, and now the other people are idiots. Even though in normal day-to-day life, had they met each other, they wouldn't think they're idiots. But put on the wrong jersey, now you're an idiot, or you're immoral, or whatever you are. It's very easy to form these groups, at least temporarily under some of these conditions. So you might worry then, well, what are those indicators of group membership, and are they really pernicious? Because it sure seems so. If we look around the world that we're in, it seems that we divide ourselves up by ethnicities, by religions, by politics in really horrible and easy ways. When I was in high school, I was part of Boy State, which is an organization that lots of different states do, and you set up these little mock communities in universities typically, and everyone is randomly assigned, roughly randomly assigned to a political party, not Democrats and Republicans, but Whigs and Federalists, or Nationalists and Federalists, or whatever archaic kind of political party term that doesn't actually make any sense. Random assignment. You know it doesn't mean anything, and you know that after this week it won't mean anything, and yet, in my experience, everybody's rallying to their, I'm a Whig. Yes, Whigs, we're better than they are. We're going to vote for the Whig candidate over the other, unless we're really persuaded otherwise. But mostly we're going to vote for the Whig candidate for no good reason at all. We can form these kinds of alliances and then fight over them. How much better we are than these other groups. Really frightening dynamic. What then are the cues that you're in my group versus not? It turns out there are some indicators of group membership that are more or less natural markers. One of those I've already referenced in those examples of the shirts or the colors of jerseys that you put on people. How we dress turns out to be a really good group marker, in-group and out-group. You see this in teenagers and adolescents all the time. Think Breakfast Club or all of these. We can stereotype, the jocks, the nerds, the emos, the whomever, right? It's how they dress that sets them apart. The goths, the rockers, the hellions, whatever group from whichever decade that you want to talk about. It's their clothes that set them apart from each other. In fact, it's like they're putting on a uniform to say, I'm part of this group versus that group. As I mentioned, there's research showing that from infancy, babies are attracted to different languages and different accents even. So it turns out that the language that people speak is a wonderful marker of in-group, out-group. What we eat marks us out as the in-group or out-group. There are all kinds of things like this. Clothes, speech patterns, what we eat. There's plenty of good reasons for these kinds of markers. If you can think of in ancestral conditions, what would have been safe cues of the people who grew up in the same kind of space, who are part of my village or my clan versus those people from several mountain ridges over. Well, over here, we dress like this. Why do we dress like this? Well, because we know how to sew clothes this way. Well, they developed a different culture of sewing clothes. So their clothes look a little different than our clothes. And for them to get a hold of our clothes, well, it'd have to be either through a friendly kind of thing or a violent kind of thing, but then we probably know about it. So clothes are a pretty good marker. Language, even better marker. It turns out that, again, in the past, and this is actually still true in many countries, you can just go over to the next village and people talk a little bit differently than they do here. Outsiders might not notice it. These two villages sure can tell, oh, they talk funny. Oh, no, you talk funny. And again, we see this in even adolescence, right? There's constant new jargon, slang, and so forth that help mark who's in-group and who's out-group. Language is a natural one because usually we grow up with the language of our people. We aren't in ancestral conditions, in historically prevalent conditions, exposed to lots of different languages. So people have characteristic ways of speaking. And food is a really good in-group, out-group marker because we learn some things are tasty very early in life. Our disgust mechanism gets tuned up to whether this is good food versus gross food and so forth. Our tastes, our preferences are tuned up by local conditions. So that's pretty good in-group, out-group. None of these are perfect. Some can be faked, but cumulatively they start indicating who's in and who's out. Now you may have noticed that I didn't say things like people's physical appearance are strong natural in-group, out-group markers. And that's because they probably aren't. Surprisingly, the things that we usually refer to as race are not all that strong natural in-group, out-group markers. So contrary to Sneetches on the beaches with stars upon thars, we wouldn't have necessarily picked out, oh, if you've got 1 star on you versus 2 stars on you, you're my group versus another group. Studies have shown that kids are drawn to spending time with, affiliating with, and learning from people who sound like them but look different, as opposed to those who look like them but sound different. By sound different, I mean their accent, their language, how they speak. So these things that we call race markers are not the natural markers of in-group, out-group, and it's easy to see why. Again, thinking back to historically prevalent ancestral conditions for humans, you would have only been surrounded by people who look like you. That would be true of the general geographical region. You would have more variation within your group, and some people are taller than others, some have straighter hair, some are darker, some are fairer. All of those types of things vary more within group than they do between groups, so it acts as a very poor in-group, out-group marker. That's not to say we can't teach our kids to be racist, of course we do, but it's special cultural conditions that encourage people to use physical features like that we call race as in-group, out-group markers. That takes special cultural scaffolding to get that kind of racism going. Whereas being afraid of people who talk differently is pretty natural and easy to get going. At this point, you might be concerned, wow, you've laid out all of these ways in which it's really easy for us to form in-group and out-groups, and it's really important that we form in-groups, at the very least, to figure out who do we listen to, who do we act like, who do we trust, and then maybe we mistrust or mistreat even out-group members. But let's not be too worried or too hasty right away. A really easy way in which to form groups or to strengthen group membership is through what social psychologists call superordinate goals. That is, we've got a common goal that we all have to rally toward. In fact, this is a way to break down those artificial temporary group memberships. So I mentioned, putting kids in different uniforms, or, put a jersey on them, and then they suddenly see the outgroup as less intelligent and more uniform than my group. Well, you can then erase those kinds of group dynamics by giving a common goal, like we have to work together to, I don't know, put up a barn, or we have to work together to save our forest, or we have to work together to stop this fire from spreading. Suddenly, different people who are part of other groups form a new group identity under that superordinate goal. Another interesting technique that is starting to be discovered in terms of breaking down these group barriers is through synchronized movements. Emma Cohen and her colleagues at Oxford University have shown if you get groups of kids and you do that old study where you put these in one colored shirt and these others in another colored shirt, so you form two groups, you can get those in-group, out-group kinds of dynamics. But then you have some of those kids actually move in synchrony, kind of like a piece of choreographed music. Think Backstreet Boys or something like that. They're actually having to do synchronized movements with each other, with a member of the outgroup. Suddenly those in-group, out-group distinctions disappear, and they don't think that other person is an idiot or less talented or less virtuous as they did before. They just go away. Okay, so things like a group coordinated activity, marching, dancing, singing together, starting to get some evidence behind it as well, and some of these other activities help actually create new groups of these different subgroups that maybe didn't get along together. We don't need to mistreat our outgroups, okay? In-group is about who do I trust, who can I learn from, but it doesn't necessarily imply that I have to mistreat people on the outgroup. And in fact, there are lots of cases in which people form in-group identities around how they positively treat outgroups. Think about the Red Cross, or think about Mother Teresa's missions in Calcutta. Here you've got groups of people who form identity around their positive treatment of other people. And in Christian theology, the body of Christ or followers of Jesus, we're supposed to be characterized by, yes, our love for each other, that's the in-group, but also our love for the out-group, because we're part of a family, a group membership that is always trying to grow that family. It's trying to invite more and more people in. We're supposed to be characterized by how well we treat people from the out-group. And in fact, that's one of our unifying or superordinate goals. While it's challenging how groupish humans are, how easily we form in-groups and out-groups, it doesn't necessarily mean that we will always use race as one of those group markers, because it's not one of the natural ones. It could go away if we would let it. It also doesn't mean we always have to mistreat the outgroup. In fact, our superordinate goal for our in-group can be how well we treat outgroup members. And of course, that's going to attract people to become part of our in-group as well. And then there are all of these other kinds of techniques or methods you can use to break down unnecessary group boundaries, like synchronized movement, superordinate goals, and just treating each other nice for a change. So I hope these are some helpful reflections in our group-divided kind of world that we live in, that it doesn't have to be this way, and just because you've got a strong sense of your group doesn't mean you have to mistreat the outgroup, and you don't have to lose your group identity either. Thanks for tuning in. If you have more topics you want to discuss, or if you'd like to talk about this one in more detail, let us know, leave some comments. But thanks for joining me here. I'm Justin Barrett from Blueprint 1543. I hope to see you next time.